Alright, welcome to this quick video on multiplication facts. So if you already know all your multiplication facts in like a multiplication table, you could skip this video. But if there's some multiplication facts you struggle with, or if you're like missing more than half your multiplication facts, then watch this and we'll talk about ways that you can start to learn them or find like workarounds for some of them that you don't know. Okay, so let's take a quick look. Multiplication fact, here we go. So, of course, you could use your calculator for multiplication facts. It's good to know a good handful of them because they'll help with division, they help with fractions, they help with ratios. I forget some on the multiplication table, so it's okay if you forget some of them too. And you can always use a calculator, of course, but it's good to know how multiplication works. So this is a good exercise, is to just make yourself a multiplication table. Use grid paper and like put each of these numbers on their own grid, and then that way where there's intersections between the numbers, you know, that can be your 1 times all these numbers, and then this row has its own grid and so on. So I would do that, put it on grid paper, and of course the way the multiplication table works is you just take the top number and you take the side number and you multiply those two numbers, so they end up with that multiplication operation on your calculator. And so if you go 1 times 1, you get 1. What does that mean? It means one group of 1. 1 times 2 gives you 2. 1 times 3, etc. These are your 1 times tables, right? So these should all match what is right in the row right against, right? And then you'll notice the same thing if you go across this way. In the first row of your multiplication table, you will work across those same numbers. So you're going to notice there's a sort of symmetry to your multiplication table, as everything kind of works along here, works along there. And that's because multiplication facts can be done either way. We say they're commutative. 3 times 4 and 4 times 3 both give 12. So you should go through and you should fill out your multiplication table for yourself. We're going to keep doing that as well. You notice that now when we're in the 2's row, we're practicing to skip counting by 2's. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24. So if we look here, like 12 times 2 is 24. And then the same thing's going to happen this way. So once again, we see that symmetry. It's the exact same set of numbers, right? 6, 6, 8, 8, 10, 10, 12, 12. And we continue 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24. So those are our 2 times tables. Now, we're going to not do all of them in here, or this video is going to be forever. You should try to do all of them, though. Use either, ideally do what you can in your head, but you can also use a calculator to check your answers after you've done them in your head, just to be sure. So we're going to start to pay attention to some of these. These numbers here, like for example, if we go 3 times 3, we get 9. 4 times 4, we'll get 16. These are called the square numbers because they all form squares. So you notice that if we have something that's 4 by 4, then it has an area of 16 and ends up being a square. 5 by 5 will form our next square, which is 25. So we even have this operation, of course, right? This operation that if I write 5 squared, I get 25. You can almost think of it kind of like 5 squared is showing you this. It's showing you a thing that's 5 by 5. And if you counted all the grids, like all these little squares, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and you count it all the way through, you get to 25. So it's a good idea to practice doing your squares, your perfect squares, we call them, more accurately. Right, and so your next one is 6 by 6, which is 36. So you should know your 2 times, your doubling series. You should know your perfect squares for sure. And then you should know your like 5 times tables, because your 5 times tables, 5, 10, 15, 20. These have a pattern, right? They always end in a 5 or a 0. That's how you know you're on the 5 times tables. We can continue across here, going counting up that way. And of course, everything we do across is the same if we go down 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, etc. And we can continue. You could go 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, and 60 down the bottom row there. So something you might notice about your 5 times tables, so 5s times any other number, is it's kind of like your 5, like say 5 times 6, for example, right? Gives you 30. Notice that 30, the 3 is half of the 6. Right? If we go 5 times 10, we get 50. Right? So it's 5's half of the 10. So there's sort of there's a pattern to notice there as well in terms of how these kind of look like they halve and double compared to each other, the 5 times tables. So something to think about there. But yeah, you should continue to kind of fill these out for yourself. And as you do that, start to notice patterns and also start to notice places where there are gaps for you, places where you like struggle. For me, it's always in here. It's these darned 7 and 8 and 9 times tables, specifically when they run into each other. So I always struggle with like 7 times 8, 8 times 9, that sort of thing. So this is the area I always struggle with, and so it's good practice. I just by doing these math videos, I become better at these ones that I forget. So 8 times 8, I know that's 64. That's one of my squares, by the way. My other square, 7 times 7 is 49. And then I'm working my way around here. So this is like an 8 times 7. That's always the one I forget. But I notice I'm in my 7 series here. So this is 35. The next one I think is 42. Is 7 more, and then this is 7 more. So the next one, 7 more, is 56. All right, that's what 7 times 8 is. It's 56. And I'll fill in this 7 times 8 as well. It's 56 also. So, you should be doing this. You should be taking some time with these multiplication tables just to become more familiar. But what you really should be knowing, especially, like, the critical stuff is, like, you need to know up to 10 both ways, right? You need to know up to 10 by 10. Because then after you do get to 10 by 10, because 10 times 10 is 100, you start to go into, it's triple digits, right? Everything underneath this is double digits. So it's, once you're above 10, then you're kind of doing double digit multiplication anyway. And you definitely need to know your 3 times tables, 4 times tables, up to your 5 times tables. Like these ones are really critical, right? You're up to 5 and you're up to 5. So if you sort of knew like this top part right here of your multiplication tables, and you knew this part right here of your multiplication tables, and you knew your perfect squares, and you were missing some of this stuff in this upper area, it's not the end of the world. You can work it out, you can figure it out. But if you're missing some stuff in these regions, then these are the regions you really should be working on filling in for yourself. So I would suggest you just practice. Just spend some time, fill in a multiplication table, figure out where you're missing your numbers, and then you can always like visualize these out too, right? You can practice thinking of them the way of repeated grouping. So like if I forget, 8 times 6, for example, so I'm wondering what this square is right here, 8 times 6, then I'll think about it. I'll go, okay, 8 groups of 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm going to have 8 of those, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rows, and I could go and sort of think it out here if I wanted to for myself. Right, and there's, a way I could work on this. Or I could write it out as a repeated addition. So it's like 6 times 8. Well, that's 6 plus 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 6, 4, 5, 6. And so then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I know my 5 times tables, so this is 30. And then 3 groups of 6 give me 18. And 30 and 18, well that's easy, so this is going to be 48 right here. Right, so you can work these out for yourself without a calculator if you can't fill them in, and it's good practice to do it. Get yourself a whole times table completed, and then you can move on to the next video. Alright, good luck.